For those of you who do not know me, I'm Elisabetta Marafioti. I'm professor of strategic management at University of Milan Bicocca, and I also teach a couple of modules of the master program MRE, so that's why some of you know me. Well, what I'm doing today is basically, of course, it will not be a proper session, but we'll take advantage of your presence here, all these leaders within your research infrastructure, to build knowledge with a methodology that is aimed at building knowledge, that is design thinking. We'll have a very short workshop. I will also try to regain the 30 minutes delay that we have now. Because the idea is that we have a break at, let's say, 10 past 11, because then the next session starts at 10:30. Well, the goal of the workshop that we are having today is basically to reflect on the role of leaders in research infrastructure. So your role as within research infrastructure. And the second step is, of course, to translate leadership in challenges. Because, okay, in the last 2 days, we heard a lot of speakers talking about leadership, of course. And very often, we were thinking about let's say, we were trying to build generalization. What we are trying to do here is try to find solutions to specific problems that a leader has to face on a daily basis. And our focus is on the challenges that you, as leaders, have to face when you have to introduce an innovation into your research infrastructure. That is, of course, the main challenge. There are a lot of studies that are telling us that the main challenge for leaders is to introduce innovation. And depending on the stage of your research infrastructure, this challenge is always present, even if with different degree of complexity, of course, because if you are at the beginning, innovation means, setting up the concept, and it's really challenging sometimes because you have really to figure out what it is. At a later stage, you have to innovate because you want to. We saw yesterday the life cycle of the research infrastructure. You never want to go down to the death, let's say. That was the main question that was, of course, involving you. And then we will try to share some ideas and innovation path, and then work on shared solution. Well, design thinking is the methodology that we are using. This was developed in Stanford University in 2000, very popular. In a sense, they have built a whole design school that is bringing together people from different fields. Consider that this methodology was developed in the engineering field, so it's not coming from management. Most of the time in Stanford, you find engineers who are expert in design thinking. And the idea here is basically to build the innovation process starting from the user. So this is something you continuously name, users of our research infrastructure. But are you really wearing their shoes? And with design thinking, this is exactly what you have to do. And of course, this is a structured method. It's structured in 5 steps. Generally speaking, when you attend a workshop that is using design thinking, something, of course, you can use in your research infrastructure too. It can take, let's say, 5 weeks, because ideally you should have at least 1 week for each step. We'll try to do it in an hour and a half, more or less. So it will be like a sort of instant business. But the idea, you will see that, it's clear that we are focusing on something that is very small. It's a collaborative game. So you will work in team. I will ask you to work in pairs, because this is what is allowed in the classroom like this. And basically, you will see that this experience will probably leave you something. And then we'll have some time to discuss about what you learned, but not only in terms of, but what was your feelings. We are I will ask you to share your feelings a lot in this session. Okay, these are the 5 phases. Okay, the first is empathize. Empathize means ask why, share feelings, understand emotions, find the needs. We are not just simply looking at needs in a very rational way. We want to understand how people feel when they experience that need. Second step is define. So we have to understand the problem that the person that we are trying to analyze is encountering. And we have to identify the point of view of our user. And this is very important. So the empathy is necessary because I have to leave my shoes and I have to enter into the shoes of my user, okay? The third step is to ideate. Creativity. I have to brainstorm and generate solutions. And this is the third point. The fourth is basically to prototype. So I have an idea. I want to make it very easy to communicate. I want to build something that can be understood by anybody. Can be, okay, here we are probably producing sketches because we don't have time to do more than that, but in reality you could do also something that is more sophisticated. And then test, because you have to immediately go through this process and generate basically a check and get feedbacks on your idea, okay? So what we have material for you. So we have here this printout. We are giving this to you. So each of you will have this small package where you have to take notes. And then we have pens in case you don't have. This is what you do. And then, of course, you need a partner. We organized chairs here they were all pairs. Now, probably you can move in case, in the back you're perfect. Maybe here you're 3, so you have to find another pair, because this is work you're doing with your neighbor, okay? What are we going to do? So find your pair. We are creating couples, okay? Okay. Okay, just give me, I'm happy to see all this energy. That's very positive. Okay, now I have to give you just a couple of instructions. Okay, I just put on the board some inspirations. What was in the British Parliament? I don't remember how. Order, okay. So these were some of the topics that you discussed with all these speakers. What is leadership? What is leadership in the context of research infrastructure? Who they are and who do you recognize leaders? Who are leaders? What are the role of leaders in promoting and fostering innovation? What are the challenges for research infrastructure? And so on and so forth. So now I'm asking you to do these things. Think about the last time you promoted innovation in your research infrastructure. The innovation can be new ideas, new products, new services, anything that was new to your research infrastructure. A real situation, okay? And basically, I ask you to focus your attention on that. And the first activity that I'm proposing you to do is basically to start, you decide who is A and who is B, okay? So the member A of the couple should interview member B about this event. So this story that is referring to a situation where you were promoting something that was innovative within your research infrastructure. And tell a story about what happened, what were the problems, what worked, what didn't work, what was frustrating you. Try to be very personal in how you explain the story, okay? You have 4 minutes for that. We have 4, so you decide who is A, B, A, B, A, B. So now A interviews B, and you have 4 minutes. You take notes on the left side of the piece of paper that I will give you now, okay? Is everything clear? Okay, do you all have, shh. You should have 1 of these per person. So now, time starts now, A interviews B, okay? And you take notes about what you understand. Mi hai messo questo... Okay, I know you would like to go on with these. Probably you can discuss about these after, during the break. But it's a good sign that you're engaged, so you want to go on with these. Now, thank you for participating so enthusiastically, even if this room was not really the best, because I think this vault was like creating a sort of terrible noise. I would like to say that the music is part of the activity. I know that, no, but the problem is that, honestly, with this confusion, it was very complex to have music at the same time. So only those at the streaming were benefiting from the music. There are also playlists that are very active. I was just using this like very atmosphere, but in any case. No, but recapping what we did today, I think it was, of course, it was like a sort of instant experience of what can happen. But I think there are probably 4 messages that I would like you to keep, and then I have some questions for you, of course. First, I think that you have to be always remember that it's very important to wear other people's shoes. And this is something that you should always keep in mind. And wearing other people's shoes doesn't necessarily mean only to ask what is the problem, but try to go more in depth, because entering into the emotions and the feelings, we are human beings. And even if you are a researcher, you are always a human being. And so you have to, I mean, this is part of your life, and this is something that, and we react also to things. So feelings are very, very important, and being in empathy with somebody else is very important. The other thing, the second message I would like to share with you is very important when you have an idea to sketch it in a very inaccurate way and share it as soon as possible. Because sharing is something that is really adding a lot of value. And I would say it's also funny, because then it's better. When you have a problem, what you do is basically you sit on your, depending on where you are in your office, and then you put your head down, thinking about what's happening. Well, with this approach, you're basically standing up, going around, walking, smiling, and talking, and it's funny. You know, you have a problem, but you find a solution, and you have fun. The third message is that collaboration is very important. Innovation is a collaboration game. So trying to engage people as much as possible. So leading innovation means also being able to engage and involve all people, also those that are not part of your team, because I think that a lot of inspirations can come from other people that maybe are working in a street, the person who's taking care of cleaning the offices or things like that, because sometimes you can get a different perspective. And the last message that I would like to leave you for this experience is that it's very important to be, to have a bias toward action, do things, try to be practical, try to transform ideas into something that can be actionable. This is what you are, I mean, we couldn't really create prototypes because in this context it was complex, but the idea is that you want to do something that can be shared, understood. If you are producing something that is also physical, you can prepare a prototype, a software, you can probably prepare a mock interview that allows you to immediately put in practice this. So these are the messages I would like to leave you, but I have some questions that I would like to pose you. So you went through this process, and it was 1 hour and 15 minutes, more or less. If you had now to come back and do it again, what would you change, thinking about your own experience in what you did? Because, I mean, you're doing it again, you know, this is probably was the first time or something. So doing it again, what would you do differently, and what would you focus on? I don't know. Is there any idea on this?
I think in our case, we'd try and formalize the problem more clearly and make sure that we were in agreement in what the problem was. Because I'm also too far away to fully understand the nuances of my partner's problem. And without having the problem absolutely clear, it makes it harder to try and resolve it.
Spend more time in understanding your problem. I think it's absolutely a need, of course.
But I think there's also the other side, is that one could end up, if one did this properly, one could end up spending an awful lot of time. And this is, in our case, this is something which is relatively small scale. Mm-hmm. And we spent an hour. But if we were doing this in the real world, and you said you might spend a period of a week to do each of the five steps, you've spent a month. How many person hours are you going to spend doing this? It's not that it's not worth it, but you've got to try and make sure you have the right people involved, and the person who cleans the office might not be the best person to involve.
No, okay. Yeah, it's understandable.
I think just to add to that, because I'm the other part of the team here, I think for me, you said you do this over several weeks normally, and I think that's good, because what you need is time for reflection and then iteration. So I agree with what Matthew's saying, but I also think one needs to build into this a much longer period with several iterations, maybe dealing with all of these in each separate iteration.
Yeah. No, I think this is very, I mean, we were working on something you were very familiar with, because you know these problems very, very, I mean, all of you share a common experience, but it's clear that it's very important. In any case, I think the most important part of this is going out, that is, you know, exploring the world, rather than reflecting is something that you can do in a very limited period of time. But then, you know, getting data and empathy around, I think it's the most private part. Is there anybody else who would like to add something? Yeah? Okay, we have this very light
Hi. Initially, when I started the interview, I was a little bit like, was the barrier that I don't know the person, and I don't know what questions I'm going to put to get to know the person first. Because I mean, if I don't know the person, I don't know how the person is going to take my questions, whether my questions are too personal or I will put the person off rather than help the person open up in the let's say with the issue. In the end, I realized that we kind of exchange our problems. So I gave the other part my problem, she gave me her issue. And one last, it's like more of a joke, this comment. I didn't see anybody crying. So
probably you don't have no, I mean, I understand your point. It's difficult, of course, to have this type of sharing, but now maybe you know better how to approach this type of How did you feel about sharing something that was incomplete? Because the solutions were just sketches, so you were sharing draft ideas to your partner to solve the problem. Was this something that caused any type of problem to you? No problem. Okay.
So I actually think it's really good to time box this and run it almost this quickly. Perhaps I mean a minute here and there would have helped, but perhaps not very much more. And I think the time boxing forces you to articulate very quickly, and I think it's better to articulate quickly, get it out and share, and rather than to refine for weeks and weeks and end.
Yeah. Well, I tell you that being an Italian, we have this idea of time that is long-lasting. You know, in Italian we say, no, this is true. I mean, we say in Italian, I tell you in Italian and I translate it, finché c'è vita c'è speranza. So when there is life, there is hope. So basically the idea is that you have time till you die, a bit more or less. And this is really inappropriate, I tell you. So giving time, it makes you more productive. I know it put a lot of pressure on you, but I think it's something, honestly, I learned while using this type of approach. And I tell you, there are some colleagues and some people that hate this, because you cannot sustain this pressure. But of course, you can design different times, but you have to set a deadline. And must be there. It's not just a formal deadline. It's something that... and you have to commit to that. That's something that is very important.
Yeah, of course, I mean, that what could have been, I mean, that our feeling was that we were not really able to get the feedback. I mean, that we were able to listen to the solutions, but not really get the feedbacks, which would have been then enable better solution on the next step. So that was the only thing.
So you would go back and repeat this phase
for the
again,
feedback.
Yes.
To listen to feedbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I was forcing the timing, of course, a little bit. And the last thing I would like to ask you is there anything from what you experienced today that you would like to bring tomorrow? Tomorrow is Friday, so it's a working day. You would like to bring back to your work and use it immediately with your colleagues or something? What is it? Everything. Okay. Fantastic. No, I was, yes.
Well, that's more a general comment, but what I will bring to my office Friday will be frustration. Frustration from knowing a new tool and not having time to use it and to use it properly. And honestly, this is really the big issue. And more generally speaking, I spend half my life working on private sector and half my life working on the public sector. At first, there was somehow a feeling that when you decide to work on the private sector, it doesn't work. When you decide to work on the private sector, you will get at least more time to things and more pressure on the more pressure on the public sector, on the private sector, and more time to think on the public sector. And nowadays, I think that this is maybe even the opposite, at least on our research infrastructure, when we have too much things to do, too much pressure, too much administrative burden, too complex ecosystem to deal with, and we just don't have time to train, we don't have time to think, we don't have time to do these useful things. And this is really an issue for me.
No, I understand your point. This is always the problem for everybody. But I can tell you that this methodology, of course, you can frame it as you want. But if you identify a problem that maybe you are encountering, that you define a setting, you can do it in a reasonable time that can probably match also with the time off. Because the other option is that you find a solution, I think. That probably is what the other expect. So in any case, this is, I think, also very rewarding for the people that are participating to the process. That's it. I don't know if there is anybody else who's willing to, okay, sure, comment. You already said that you would apply everything. Okay, no, sorry. It was you before, sorry.
I have a question, which, is it helpful to share whatever the problem or the issue is with someone who is completely outside of the...
Yes.
Yeah.
But the important thing is not to share the problem. That you, this interview mechanism is a mechanism that you use to make your own opinion on what is the problem. Because sometimes there could be also a different perspective on the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe you find out that the problem is another one.
Thank you.
Well, this has been really another fantastic training exercise. Okay. Thank you, Elisabetta. We were just saying that one of the issues that we identified like a possible improvement for this process was, or for us, was to hire a consultant, okay? But we have been the consultant of each other.
Yeah.
So actually I think it goes in that way. I mean, we could explore this further. There is a very nice community here.
Yeah.
And we could bring, keep some kind of forum or activity.
I thought it was very funny because at a certain point somebody said, no, but do I have to find the solution to my problem? Because I'm learning a lot from her, so now I can know how I can solve my problems. I think that was great because I think we don't have time, of course, to go on the solutions because I think it would be nice also to share what were the problems. It would be probably a very nice learning, but this was not part of the goal of this session. We have a coffee break now. So I thank you. Yes.
Can we keep the copy of our partner?
Yes, you can keep, and you can also share the slides. I don't know, Claire has all the material. And then if you need any, I mean, if you have any question or whatever, you know how to reach me because I think there are slides. There's my email on the slides, and then through the Embry portal you find me. Thank you very much. And now the break so you can continue talking about this.